The husband brought his pregnant mistress from a business trip, and he gave his wife to the banker for debts. But seeing her a year later, when little Jerome asked, "When is Daddy coming back from his business trip?" Bertha Ortiz replied, "Soon, son." "No, I like it when he's gone. When he's not here, nobody interrupts me watching cartoons, and we go to the playground more often," the son unexpectedly answered. Bertha sighed with disappointment. Now even the child is against me. Yes, her marriage with Michael had long been strained. Bertha, as a smart woman, couldn't help but notice it increasingly. When he stayed home, he snapped at his wife and son, nitpicked over trivial matters, and sometimes for no reason at all. Wasn't this the reason for his frequent business trips? She simply couldn't see any other reason for his frequent absences. Michael Ortiz was in business, mostly unsuccessful. Not that he was bankrupt, it hadn't come to that, but mostly thanks to her. Bertha, no, she didn't work in her husband's company. Her status was modest, a housewife. But she understood something about business. 3 courses in economics plus a natural inclination allowed her to grasp business matters and sometimes give her husband very sound advice. It's just a pity he didn't listen much. He often brushed her off, expressing dissatisfaction. "What do you understand about it? You're not even a decent housewife. Last week you burnt the cheesecakes, and it's always the same." So he struggled as best as he could, and when something didn't work out once again, Bertha understood he didn't listen to her advice, but she avoided talking about it. She knew it would lead to the same thing. "What would you understand? If I listened to your advice, I'd be scavenging in the dumps by now." So he started going on business trips more often. Why? For what reason? To all questions, negotiations, closing deals. It's none of your business. If you don't understand, don't interfere. Well, Bertha didn't interfere. Sometimes she even thought it was his business. And in the end, if the business collapsed altogether, she wouldn't be particularly upset. There wasn't much benefit from it, and the worries were overwhelming. Let Michael get a job somewhere as a manager, and they would live peacefully. But no, he already saw himself as a hotshot businessman, so he kept spinning in circles. Things weren't going well. Debts were piling up. The family had practically no income. There was no home of their own, and when there was, he behaved in such a way that even their 5-year-old son was fed up with him. So he left. Now, when he would return, no one knew. "I'll return when I return," he said. And wait for him. Worry when Bertha calls. He gets angry, he has business to attend to, and she distracts him. With such a situation, suspicions would arise in anyone. Bertha had her suspicions too, but she brushed them off, as if they needed this on top of everything else. If there wasn't trust in their shared life, what would remain? Only divorce. Such thoughts had already come to mind. Why hide it? Anyone could guess when a quarrel followed by an argument and then vice versa, but they loved each other not just in the past, now too. At least she wanted to think so and believe in it. And where could she go? They shared the apartment they moved into together after getting married. Back then, in the very beginning, they loved each other and knew it was forever. She dropped out of college because she believed in her beloved, believed he would be a good businessman, and everything would be wonderful. And now, more and more often, she realized it was all in vain. But then Michael's return from a business trip showed just how much. He didn't return alone, but with a woman. At first, Bertha wasn't even particularly surprised or worried. Well, maybe the wife of some friend who happened to come along. It didn't even cross her mind. What Michael said after his wife politely greeted and let his companion into the apartment was, "Meet Bertha. This is Amanda Walters, my future wife." Even after these words, Bertha took them as a silly, inappropriate joke. She even made a joke herself about a harem of beloved wives. But Michael apparently decided to immediately clarify everything. "No, it's not how you think. Amanda really will be my wife. She, as you see, is expecting a child indeed." It was noticeable from the figure of the guest. It's unknown what stories Michael told Amanda during the genesis of their relationship, probably the familiar tale of all married men about the sick, old wife with whom there had long been no relationship. Because only that could make a girl come to someone else's home. Now, she, a clever person, realized that everything wasn't as she was told, and she stood there not knowing where to look. She was confused and even somewhat frightened. "Okay, but why to us?" That was all Bertha could squeeze out. "And where else?" "I told you," Michael replied, "pregnant, nowhere to live. What should she do?" "And not to us, but to me. You, Bertha, can start getting ready. Oh, here's Jerome." He noticed the son peeking out of the room. "Come here. Let's get acquainted with your new mommy. Yes, Amanda, you can leave the boy with us for now or forever, whatever works for you. Don't stand there like statues. Amanda, come on into the apartment. Everything here is yours now." He decisively stomped off, patting his son on the head as he went. He decided to let his wives, current and future, sort it out on their own. After his words, Bertha felt as if she were holding a heavy cast iron skillet in her clenched hand. with which she could now hit Amanda's growing belly. Jerome clung to her in fear, and this girl, but if she allowed herself any impudent act, said something offensive. But no, she stood there, clenched as if that skillet were already over her head, eyes wide with fear. "I'm sorry," she whispered almost inaudibly, hesitating to enter the apartment. "How could you?" Bertha asked her. "You knew he was married." "Yes, but he told me completely differently," she exclaimed in a half-whisper. "I understand. And you know I really have nowhere to go, and the child, I mean children, will be born soon. They say it'll be twins. My parents kicked me out. My father will kill me if I go back. And Michael said you wouldn't mind the guest," Amanda explained. "Well, I don't mind, but what can I do now? I'll just have to swap the apartment. Half of it belongs to me and my son. If you want, Jerome can stay with us for now," Amanda began more boldly. But Bertha stopped her. "Just don't touch my son." "No, no, of course not. I didn't mean it like that. Just if it's difficult for you for now," the mistress babbled, gradually regaining her composure. "Well, after such news, nothing will be difficult for me anymore," Bertha cut her off, feverishly thinking about where to go. She didn't intend to stay in the apartment with this couple. "And you come in. Don't stand in the doorway. It really is all yours for now and forever," Michael declared, apparently having overheard the conversation through the door. "Don't rush about swapping anything. And anyway, let's go. I have a confidential conversation with you. And you, Amanda, come on in. Make yourself at home. Don't be shy." She wanted to cry, wanted to lash out at her husband, make him hurt as much as he hurt her. And they still had to think about where to go after this. And what does he want to talk about? Apologize? As if something like this could be forgiven. But it seemed she overestimated her husband now, apparently former. His appearance at home with his pregnant mistress in front of his wife and son turned out to be just the tip of the iceberg. "Sit down, Bertha," he said in an official tone, like a supplicant in his lofty office. "I understand your outrage. It's entirely justified. Let's not talk about it." "I'm not outraged. I've wanted to leave you for a long time. You're a slimeball, a failure. I have nothing to do with you." Bertha knew how to jab at her husband most painfully and wasn't going to spare him. The official tone indeed vanished. Her husband now spoke in falsetto, a clear sign of agitation and restrained anger. "Well, I just anticipated your moves." "Fine, leave. No one's going to cry, especially since I'm not alone. But you, I must tell you, mostly you, owe a huge, no, actually an enormous, sum to the bank. So you'll have to sell your share of the apartment, and you'll work off the remaining debt yourself." "I don't know exactly how," Michael blurted out, writing either from anger or nervousness. "What are you talking about? What debt? I haven't borrowed anything from anyone." Bertha's tone cooled, finding her husband's words not just an empty threat. Anything could be expected from him. Michael sensed this and straightened up. "How could you understand it? A madam economist with 3 years of college. You didn't even see that from the very beginning the business was unprofitable. I was barely holding on with loans, which I simply stopped getting. So then I started acting under your ID, meaning I took out loans in your name, and now it's your turn to repay them." Bertha really didn't want to show her husband her confusion, but his words truly knocked the ground out from under her feet. She immediately believed everything said and realized that fixing the situation would be very, very difficult. On the other hand, she needed to fight for the apartment, for her freedom from debts, and that perhaps was possible. But to fight, she needed strength. And where to find it after she found herself at the epicenter of such events? At the very least, she needed somewhere to sit, cry, think, and then decide how to proceed. She stood up, trying to maintain at least the appearance of composure. "Okay, Michael, I'll think about all of this and hopefully make the right decision." "Don't be upset if it's not in your favor," she said, then left the room. She quickly packed her and her son's essentials and went to her friend's place, hoping she would accept him for at least a few days. With this friend, they were like sisters, even closer. They went to school together, then admittedly to different colleges, but they never lost touch. They got married in the same year. Admittedly, Mary Banks didn't have children, but her husband was much more successful than Michael, for which he paid. Apparently, he was killed by his competitors. Mary became a wealthy widow, but since she got married not at all by calculation but out of immense love, after her husband's death, she didn't think about any new relationships. She lived alone, interacting with people without much enthusiasm, making an exception only for her old friend Bertha and her son, of course, who was her godson. That's why she eagerly answered Bertha's call. "What's the matter? Come over, of course. I'm always happy to see you." Mary lived in a small country mansion where there was indeed plenty of space. Jerome, who loved his aunt enthusiastically, demonstrated his excitement about the upcoming trip, although it was clear the situation at home had greatly frightened him. "Don't worry, sweetheart. Everything will be fine," his mother reassured him. "Things will settle down. You'll just see your dad much less often." "It's okay. I rarely saw him before anyway. But who was that lady with him? And why did he say she's the new mom? Don't pay attention. It was just a tasteless joke from your dad. There are no new moms, you know that. In Mary's house, it seemed like her son had forgotten about his troubling questions. There, he was given complete freedom, which he didn't hesitate to take advantage of, and Bertha finally had the opportunity to cry. Can you imagine, Mary, such treachery? Why would he do this to me? She sobbed. Stop crying, Bertha. It's not worth it. Calm down. You need to sort things out with him like a grown-up. You're smart and strong. Go straight to court and seek justice there. You won't get anywhere with these people on a human level. You'll have to go by the law and let him not doubt it. He will be held accountable for everything. He might be held accountable in court, but what about us, Jerome and me? Although I don't even need him to be accountable, I don't know where to start. First, we'll figure it out tomorrow with a fresh mind. But for now, lie down and get some sleep. Morning is wiser than evening. I'll put Jerome to bed myself. Don't worry about him. In the morning, Bertha did wake up feeling refreshed and determined, but the decision she made was not what her friend expected. I'll go to that bank to the director. I'll explain the situation to him and see what he says. Oh, are you sure about that? Mary doubted. Think about it. Can these bankers be moved by pity or anything like that? I won't go there to cry or complain. I'll just explain that I didn't take out those loans. Michael manipulated things in some fraudulent way, and this banker, whoever he is, should understand that it's impossible for me to repay such an amount. Who am I? An unemployed single mother of a young child. Let Michael deal with it or his employees who hand out such sums blindly. Whether I achieve anything or not is another question, but I need to talk. Bertha herself didn't really know what to expect from this conversation, and she had no idea who this banker person was, so she was going in blind. But she didn't see any other way out. She didn't want to get involved with the courts just yet. I hope to resolve this issue somehow peacefully, she thought. When Bertha explained that she had come for a personal matter, an administrator approached her at the bank. Ryan Atkins is here, but he's not feeling well, so he probably won't be able to see you. Can I help you with your issue still? Please inform him. I don't think it's within your competence. This is regarding a rather significant debt. Bertha spoke so convincingly that she was escorted to the manager. After all, she expected to see a grumpy old man like Mr. Scrooge sitting on piles of money. But no, Ryan Atkins was quite young, barely older than her, in fact. But it was clear that he was unwell. He was pale with dark circles under his eyes, and his face was constantly contorted with pain. Bertha immediately felt uncomfortable burdening this person with her problems. Her resolve waned, but she was already here, so she needed to at least explain why. She began to explain how she ended up owing money to his bank. Yes, I understand you. You seem to have become a victim, and what's most unfortunate is a victim of someone close to you. Yes, but you understand I can't repay such a significant astronomical sum, neither in parts nor all at once. I'm not employed, and it's uncertain when I'll be able to start working and how much I'll earn. I'm not going to demand repayment of this debt from you. I mean, say something like, these are your problems. It's become our common problem, hasn't it? So I can offer you a job at my bank. The salary will be decent, and you can use part of it to repay the debt. Does that sound like a suitable option for you? Ryan's proposal would have more than sufficed for Bertha, and she liked the man himself. He inspired trust and seemed genuinely sympathetic to her situation. But she was a realist and didn't take on tasks she knew were impossible. Yes, you understand correctly. It could have been a lifesaver for me, but I don't have a completed education. I finished my studies in the 3rd year due to personal circumstances, and I have no work experience whatsoever. Well, that's not such a big problem. We'll find you a suitable position. Your education still allows you to start working. You can't be called completely ignorant, can you? Ryan smiled, and that smile made Bertha feel more confident. Suddenly, a small pendant fell out between the buttons of his shirt, hanging around his neck. He followed the visitor's gaze, smiled slightly embarrassedly, and explained, "It's sort of a talisman. It's hard to call me truly religious. It always shows up on people." Somehow it seemed like a good sign to her, and she agreed to the offer. Bertha returned home to Mary feeling uplifted. She had a job, the opportunity to live independently without constantly worrying about that damn debt. Can you imagine, Mary? What a good person that manager turned out to be. Now I'll have the opportunity to rent an apartment and live peacefully. That's great, of course. Congratulations, but how will you deal with Michael? Are you really going to put everything on hold like this? No way, but first I need to start working. It's a big plus. Don't you agree? I'm afraid this couple will try to claim custody of Jerome from me, and they'll have every chance. But this way, they won't. I'm working, I have a stable income, housing, so they have no grounds to complain. Well, agreed. Well, you can stay with me for a while. I don't mind. Thank you, Mary. I'll have to do that until I find an apartment and get my first paycheck, but I won't stay on your couch forever. A few days later, Bertha started her first job. Ryan himself took her to the department, introduced her to the staff, and told them to be attentive to her, not to refuse help and support since she had no experience. He probably shouldn't have done that. The staff were not pleased that someone who hadn't even completed their education and had never worked before would be working in their department. Well, look who's here. So they took on an intern and they even gave her a full salary like a regular employee. Oh, does she understand the position she's putting herself in here? No, she's walking around all happy and content, acting like she doesn't need anyone. Her boss even brought her in himself, and compared to her, we're just passersby. Who is she to him anyway? A relative or? No, doesn't seem like it. I can't imagine why he's doing this. Well, why? That's his business. But why do we need extra work? Make sure she doesn't mess anything up. Answer her silly questions, and double-check every number she touches. Like we don't have enough work of our own. All these conversations were held behind Bertha's back, but she of course heard them, and what she didn't hear, she guessed from the unfriendly looks of her colleagues. It was unpleasant, of course, but she understood that people don't like favorites of the management anywhere, and she tried to do her duties as best as she could to avoid adding more work and trouble for others. The fact that she didn't make any friends at her new job was even helpful, if not to her personally, then at least to the common cause. She was being ignored, considered almost a fool whom the boss hired for some sick reason of his own. Meanwhile, she could quietly delve into her work and see how others worked, and she inadvertently became a witness to a conspiracy in progress. One group of employees decided to appropriate a portion of the income from an upcoming deal for themselves, and if it weren't for Bertha's attentiveness, they would have succeeded. Because Ryan himself was feeling worse and worse, he wasn't even showing up at work every day anymore, staying informed remotely, and he wasn't being told everything. It turned out that if it weren't for Bertha, he could have suffered serious damage. I see I wasn't mistaken in hiring you, he said. Please bring the relevant documents to my house. I can't come to the bank. I'm ill, but I must stay informed. Bertha went to the boss, taking the documents with her. She was driven there by a chauffeur, as Ryan lived in a country mansion. From office conversations, she knew he had a wife, and the attitude of the boss's subordinates towards her was not the best. Her name was Virginia, and all the employees blamed her for not taking good care of her sick husband. Some even believed that Virginia was partly to blame for Ryan's illness. But Bertha didn't delve into that. What business was it of hers about someone else's wife? She wasn't planning on becoming part of Ryan's family. Their connection was only through work. She expected to see the boss's wife as a sad, worried woman, and that was understandable. Her husband was ill, but she met a cheerful, radiant lady who clearly didn't have time to be sad. Bertha had only just begun to explain that Ryan had called her for work when the hostess waved her hand and told the elderly woman who had come out, probably a housekeeper, to take her to Ryan's office. He'll figure out why she's here, and she hurriedly left. The housekeeper, grumbling something disapprovingly under her breath, escorted Bertha to the boss's office, let her in, and Bertha was surprised at how the boss looked. Since their last meeting, which took place a few days ago, he had visibly deteriorated. Hello, are you feeling unwell? Maybe we should postpone our conversation for a few days, Bertha suggested. No need, he replied. It seems I'll always feel unwell now. Yes, my health has completely deteriorated. Let's get down to business instead. Did you see a doctor? What did they say? The guest couldn't calm down after all. She knew that Ryan was perfectly fine not long ago. What happened to him so suddenly? Why is this young man melting like sugar in boiling water? What's with these doctors? He waved off. They don't say anything. Can't figure it out themselves. Enough about that, Bertha. I'm very grateful to you for exposing the conspiracy, but let's talk about something else. They worked on business matters for over an hour, and eventually Bertha realized that the boss had weakened significantly. I'm sorry, but I can't burden you anymore. You're not well. Lie down, rest, and I'll call your wife or the housekeeper right away. You shouldn't overexert yourself. Yes, you're probably right, he replied weakly. I apologize for not seeing you out. They said goodbye, and Bertha left. In the corridor, meeting the housekeeper, she said, please go to Ryan. It seems he's not feeling very well. Why would he feel well? The woman agreed, escorting the guest to the door. He works non-stop. Those doctors can't figure out what's wrong with him, and that may have a wife of his is wandering around who knows where. Wife? Bertha asked. Yes, Virginia. Damn, such a spouse. Her husband is sick, and she's busy dressing up and putting on makeup in the morning. Isn't it because of her that he got sick? What else could it be? Oh, I wish he had a good granny. I'm afraid Virginia might be up to something. Watch out for her. Such thoughts might have amused Bertha. She didn't believe in witchcraft and grannies, but as she left, she realized that perhaps the wife wasn't so innocent after all. She saw Virginia passionately kissing some young man outside the gates. Maybe Ryan found out about her affair and got sick, Bertha thought on her way home, feeling sorry for the banker who was literally dying in the prime of his life. But what could she do to help? Perhaps tell him about his wife's affair, but wouldn't that look like gossip? If he already knows, then definitely, and if not, she might only worsen the situation with this news. Very soon, the situation escalated dramatically. Ryan became so ill that he was sent to the hospital, but the doctors still couldn't make a correct diagnosis. They began to insist that the patient needed to be transferred to the capital, but unexpectedly, the wife intervened. In front of the doctor, she burst into tears, went into hysterics, and wringing her hands, cried out, "If fate decides he's going to die, then let it be here at home next to me. Here we can bury him with our relatives. And if he dies in the capital, then what? What am I going to do? What?" Meanwhile, Ryan fell into a coma. His faithful wife did not show up at the hospital. She was more often seen striding around the bank with an important air, giving orders one more foolish than the other. Most of the employees, who had already mentally buried their boss and resigned themselves to the bank's collapse, did not argue with her. Only Bertha dared to point out the errors in her decisions, for which she paid dearly. The new mistress, intolerant of objections, pounced on her with reproaches. "Who are you to give me advice and comment on my actions? You were hovering around my husband, weren't you? But did anything come of it? Do you think I'll listen to you?" She scandalously kicked Bertha out of work. Finding out that Bertha apparently owed the bank a huge sum, she declared, "Repay the debt immediately. If you don't return it soon, I'll report you to the police. And don't think I'm joking. Only Ryan can demand repayment of the debt. He's the owner, and he's still alive. I had a contract with him regarding this amount," Bertha said. "Look at you, so clever. He may be alive, but for how long? The doctors aren't promising anything good." "Well, fine. Since there's a contract, I'll wait. But get out of the bank." So Bertha was left without a job again, and with a large debt. She and her son continued to live with Mary, although there were no issues with that. But with everything else, she wasn't particularly worried about the debt for now, as she had a contract with the banker. Bertha hoped for Ryan's recovery. Finding a job didn't work out as she would have liked, though. An acquaintance advised her to work as a cleaner in the hospital. "They won't kick you out from there, that's for sure. Cleaners there are worth their weight in gold. The work is hard, but the pay well. Not that great," she said. Indeed, she was hired right away. Only later did Bertha find out that Ryan was in the same department, though unconscious, and no one could say when or if he would regain consciousness. From the staff, Bertha learned that his wife rarely visited him, and not even him but the doctors, to find out if he's alive. And when she does, she's a real witch, one of the nurses told Bertha. She's waiting for her husband to die, and sometimes she comes with her lover right in front of everyone. "Are you serious? Maybe it's not a lover but a relative or someone for work," Bertha said. "Oh, it's true. She's making out with her relative right under everyone's noses," the nurse replied. Then Bertha became a witness to such a visit herself. Virginia came with the same guy she was hugging by the car. Now they both entered Ryan's room, and Bertha became afraid. What if they, tired of waiting, decided to do something terrible and irreversible? She pressed her ear to the door of the room and started listening. "You see, he's lying here like a vegetable, not eating or drinking. How am I supposed to feed him?" Virginia argued. "Well, he must be fed somehow through IVs, injections, etc., her companion said discontentedly. "Well, yes, somehow, but I can't just inject what we need into him," the woman defended herself, while her lover insisted. "You should have negotiated with the nurse. You're just stingy with money." They would have agreed. "Oh, thanks. I don't plan on ending up in jail," Bertha retorted. "And I don't plan on waiting until retirement for you to come up with something," the lover snapped. Bertha hurried away from the door. She really didn't want to be caught eavesdropping, but what could she do? From the conversation, it was clear that Virginia and her lover Jack Wilson were poisoning her husband. She went to the police to report it. "Now he's in a coma, and it's unknown if he'll survive," she said. "Do you have any evidence?" the investigator asked. "Where would I get it from?" Bertha was flustered. "I didn't record the conversation." "So what are we supposed to confront this Virginia with? It's just your word against hers. The only thing we can do is visit the hospital, talk to the doctor, but we have nothing to confront the wife with," the investigator concluded. Bertha realized she would have to take action herself, but how? She resorted to the only available option. She called Virginia. "I know the reason for your husband's illness. I won't discuss the moral aspect with you. I want to propose a deal. I have evidence of a crime, attempted murder of your husband, which, as you understand, carries a long sentence. I propose an exchange. I'll hand over the recording of the conversation with your lover, and you'll sign a receipt for my debt," Bertha said. "And what guarantees do I have that you don't have other evidence?" Virginia asked briskly. "Only my word. I need a receipt. And who and how you plan to kill is not my concern, Bertha replied. She wanted to meet them with a recorder and force this couple to talk about their plans. Ryan's wife agreed, and the meeting was set. Of course, Virginia, a thoroughly dishonest woman, didn't believe in any honest words. She intended to get rid of the unwanted witness, and for that she had an accomplice, Jack, her lover. Jack, if we don't silence her, it's the end for us. We have to get rid of her. There's no other way, Virginia insisted. And how do you propose we do that? Jack, who had never killed anyone before, was surprised. I leave that to you. You're a man, you should know better. And I assume you don't want to go to jail any more than I do, Virginia replied. All right, I'll come up with something, Jack replied reluctantly. On the appointed day, Bertha went to the meeting. Mary said she had to go to work. You've been called in for an urgent matter, she said, not wanting to involve her friend in such affairs. It was an extreme, rash decision because Bertha didn't return from the meeting that evening or the next morning. Mary was beside herself with worry. She didn't know what to do now. Should she report it to the police? But she had no idea where Bertha had gone, not even where she worked. She knew she was at the hospital, but which one? Jerome, she began, questioning the crying boy. Do you remember where Mommy worked? I do. She used to take me with her. She mops the floors there and goes to visit Uncle in one of the rooms, the one she used to work with at the bank. Oh, that's something. Let's go, maybe we'll find out something there. They arrived and heard good news. Ryan had come out of his coma. During his time unconscious, his blood and entire system had been cleared, and he was feeling quite all right. Virginia, who was informed of this over the phone, rushed over, showing her joy. But Ryan greeted her coldly and wearily. However, upon seeing Jerome, he was pleased. He had seen the boy before. Bertha had brought him to the bank once, but now he was with an unfamiliar woman. Hello, little one. Where's your mommy? Is she working? Hello, I don't know where she is. She was fired from the bank and then worked here at the hospital, and she used to come to you, but you were always asleep. Ryan looked questioningly at Mary, who told him about her friend's disappearance. Don't worry, I'm awake now, and I'll find your mom, Jerome. She won't go anywhere from us, he said. He sent his wife home and talked to Mary, who told him everything she knew from Bertha, including her suspicions. And you know, Ryan, I'm almost certain she was right. Yes, I'm sure too. The doctors have already told me that my illness was the result of outside interference, but where else could I have gotten poison? Only at home, and certainly not from the housekeeper, who has known me since childhood. But first we need to find Bertha and then deal with Virginia. He informed the doctor that he was ready to be discharged. Understand, there's a lot of business to attend to. I've let everything slip during my illness. Find those who did this to me. It's absolutely necessary now that I'm smart. I won't take anything unnecessary at home. Enough I've suffered. Yes, he was still weak, but there was no reason to keep him in the hospital. They started preparing him for discharge, and as soon as he left the hospital, he went straight to the police, reporting the disappearance of a person and poisoning. They remembered that not long ago a young woman had come with a similar statement, and now she had disappeared. All of this was very suspicious. I'm going home now, where a potential poisoner lives and possibly a murderer, and I would like to have the ability to quickly call the police for safety. Something like a panic button, is that possible? I'll cover all the expenses, he said. He was given such an opportunity, and upon arriving home, Ryan immediately installed a hidden camera to monitor his wife. On the very first day, he saw her tampering with the food she intended to give him. Ryan realized that all his suspicions, as well as Bertha's words, were not unfounded. It was a horrifying discovery. He understood that there were no special feelings between him and Virginia anymore, but not to this extent. He was ready to live with this woman until old age, but if she asked for a divorce, he wouldn't resist, calmly letting her go and even doing everything possible to secure her future. And yet she had conceived a terrible crime, almost killing him. But why? He didn't bother to offer any explanations. Meanwhile, Virginia, unaware that her husband was aware of her intentions and actions, behaved as before, showing genuine joy at his return. She even set the table for a romantic dinner, but Ryan decided that he wouldn't eat or drink at home anymore. He doubted that his wife wouldn't decide to continue what she had started. However, there was still no evidence, and he preferred to remain silent for now, not accusing his wife of a terrible crime without proof. He simply refused to eat or drink at home, citing that he didn't want to and now had a special diet. "Why are you doing this?" Ryan exclaimed. "Why are you behaving like this?" "Because I don't want to eat what you cook. I don't like it," he retorted. In reality, he deliberately provoked his wife a little, hoping that she would eventually resort to more active actions, as this would give him the freedom and opportunity to openly show his attitude towards what was happening, and he waited for it. One day, pretending to be weak, he rested in his room, and when the house quieted down, he slowly came out. When he reached his wife's room, He heard quite recognizable sounds and, at the same time, a male voice. "No, Virginia, understand you're still dragging this out. How much longer will this continue? And you try it yourself. Did he figure it out, or did someone gossip to him? Have you dealt with that snake, Bertha?" "For sure, of course I did everything I could. And you're still dragging it out. Understand he eats nothing at home and doesn't drink only water from the tap. And even then, he rinses the cup thoroughly first. What else can I do?" "Figure something out. Understand, I can't wait much longer." "Jack, darling, do you think I can?" Ryan opened the door and saw his wife lying in the arms of some young man. The lover stared at him in astonishment. "Well," Virginia said, "Ryan, come on, tell me that I misunderstood everything, that it's not what I think." "Not like that," she exclaimed. "I don't know what you're thinking, but there was nothing like that here," she said, pulling the covers over herself. Her lover apparently decided to act differently. "Well, if you understand everything," the guy said insolently, "then just accept it as it is. Sometimes it happens, and I couldn't care less about what happens. You both poisoned me together, and you killed Bertha alone, although what difference does it make? You will both be sent to prison. And you know, Virginia, you made a big mistake. Just think, if you had confessed everything and decided to divorce me, I wouldn't have said a bad word. I would have let you go and even made you a gift for your wedding." "We don't need your gifts," the wife said angrily. "How was I supposed to know what you would do if you found out I loved someone else? And anyway, I don't need your gifts. I need everything. Got it?" "I got it. Probably such a handsome boy is worth a lot." "Well, okay, let's not talk about it. Get dressed and wait for the police." "Why did you come up with this?" "What police?" Virginia was scared, realizing that the matter was serious. Her lover also began to hurry to dress, but it was too late. Law enforcement arrived and detained the poisoners. Jack began to be questioned about where he had disposed of Bertha's body. What Bertha he initially denied, but then he had to confess. "Well, yes, I wanted to kill her. She knew too much, blackmailed us. By the way, she's to blame herself. I took her to the forest. I wanted to do something there but didn't have time. She broke free and ran away." "And where did she run to?" "Where did you take her?" the investigator asked. "You know, there are no addresses in the forest, but I can show the place. She ran towards the swamp. I was going after her, but she was already walking around there, almost waist deep in water. Well, I'm not going after her. Probably she drowned there, but I have nothing to do with it. I didn't push her there. So if you had killed her, she wouldn't have drowned in the swamp." "Well, yeah, maybe I wouldn't have killed her, just threatened her. That's all. I'm not a killer, never have been." "So the first attempt, it turns out, was unsuccessful." "Well, maybe so, but there won't be a second attempt. I'm not going to kill anyone later. It was all Virginia's idea." "And what about herself now? Will she come out clean?" "Virginia is unlikely to come out clean, but the police weren't planning to search for Bertha in the swamp. The person drowned. What can you do? No one is going to venture into the mire after her." But Ryan was ready for even that. He remembered that Bertha had tried to save his business from bankruptcy and him from death, and he simply couldn't leave things as they were. So upon learning exactly where she disappeared, he went there. Of course, he was afraid to enter the swamp. He just stood on the edge and decided to circumvent the area. He simply couldn't believe that such a woman had perished. Maybe she managed to get out somehow, or someone saw something and perhaps even helped her. He began to navigate the swampy area, and indeed, at the other end, he found an abandoned village. But there apparently no one lived, and not for a long time. The houses were empty, half collapsed, showing no sign of human presence. However, smoke was rising above one house, which appeared more well-kept. Ryan approached, knocked, and upon hearing a woman's voice, pushed the door open. There sat an elderly woman, and next to her on the bed lay Bertha. It was unbelievable. She was clearly ill but alive. Ryan rushed to her. "I knew I would find you. Knew you couldn't have perished," and he cautiously hugged her, suddenly realizing that she had become dear to him from the moment she came to the bank to explain about the debt. "Well, they came for you just as I said, and she could have perished. I barely found her alive," the hostess said. "Ryan," Bertha whispered weakly, "I really almost died. Clary saved me miraculously." "And who are you?" Ryan turned to her. "I live here, sort of a recluse. The house was abandoned, so I took it. People sometimes come to me for whatever reason. I seem to be known as a herbalist here. Well, they come for various herbs. That's all," she sighed. And Ryan suddenly felt a strong sympathy for this quiet woman. He understood people don't become recluses for no reason. Apparently, some life tragedy made her leave society, but he didn't ask what exactly. He understood the pointlessness of such a question, and something else should interest him now. "So," he said, "thank you very much, but tell me, what happened to Bertha? How did she survive?" "Well, what can I say? She almost drowned in the swamp, and the water is cold there. She somehow got out by herself. I don't know how. It's a desolate place, a marsh. She got a strong cold, had inflammation in her lungs, but seems to be recovering now. I don't have any real medicine with me. I treat her with what I know, various herbs, incantations. But just in case, take her to the city. Let the doctors have a look. Maybe something's left there. The illness is serious, and I couldn't transport her to the city and couldn't call either. I have no means of communication. Bertha. Ryan turned to her. We'll go now and do everything right. Do you know you saved me, and not just from bankruptcy? You reported the poisoning, and the police finally opened their eyes to my ex-wife. Apparently not very much, sighed Bertha. What kind of salvation is it if you were almost poisoned? Well, I wasn't poisoned. Besides, it was all planned before we even met. But now I've split up with my wife. She's under trial, and Jack, her lover too. I guess you'll have to testify against him and the police. After all, he's the one who drove you into the woods. Well, you'll tell them all about it. But for now, get ready. We're going home, Ryan urged her. You'd better tell me. Where's Jerome? Bertha asked. Have you met with Mary? I did. He's with her now, but we'll pick him up, of course. We even became a bit friendly. I suggest you move in with me from Mary's. You know, Bertha, I've been thinking about this before. And now what do you mean, live with you? I don't understand. Bertha looked really bewildered. She was surprised by such an offer. Yes, she found this man attractive, and she had noticed before that he cared for her. But living under the same roof. Are you against it, Bertha? I understand this is all unexpected for you, but I want to say, seeing that the conversation was getting more personal, Clary Harris delicately slipped out the door. Soon Ryan and Bertha also left together, holding hands. With an experienced eye, the elderly woman understood this couple was starting a new life together. Are they not in a hurry, she thought, although after what they had been through, they didn't want to postpone life. We'll really leave soon, Clary. Bertha hugged her. I'm so sorry to leave you. I got so used to you, so fond of you. Maybe you'll come with us to the city, just stay there. Ah, I've seen enough already, she sighed. I haven't seen anything good, and I don't belong among people. I'll stay here. And suddenly she froze, looking at Ryan's chest. His pendant had slipped out between the buttons of his shirt. What's this? She reached out and took the ornament. I don't know. I've always had it. They say my biological mother hung it on me. I was raised in an orphanage, and then I was adopted. Clary suddenly burst into tears and fell onto Ryan's chest. Son, is it really you? Ryan asked uncertainly, taking her by the shoulders. This is my pendant, Clary cried. I hung it on my son's neck. I knew that someday I would find him because of this. I betrayed you, Ryan. How did this happen? He wondered. I was told that I was practically born in an orphanage. Well, yeah, you were barely a year old. I had to give you away. I still can't forgive myself and never will. You, of course, won't forgive me either. And you'll be right. I betrayed you. I gave birth not from my husband, just some random guy. At first, I thought we'd live together like many do, but then I met someone else. He agreed to marry me. I hid from him the fact that I had a child, but when it came time for the wedding, how could I hide it? I thought and thought about what to do. And then I took you to the shelter, not forever, but because of a difficult situation. I was sure I'd take you back later. I reasoned that later, after we got married, I'd say, but when I did, he just said there would be no children in his house, neither his own nor others. I wanted to leave, but it was too late. He's not the kind of person who lets go. Oh, what I endured from that husband for 15 years, you wouldn't see anything like that even in a horror movie, and there's no need for you to know. And then, when I buried him, I rushed to look for you, but it was too late. So I decided, why should I live after that? But you can't die by order. I just decided to leave everyone. I was ashamed to live among people, so I became a loner. My grandmother, now she was a real herbalist, taught me a lot. I decided to bring benefit in this way to atone for my guilt. Well, that's a story, sighed Ryan. But I don't blame you. There are all sorts of circumstances, and I lived quite well with my foster parents' education, upbringing, and a lifeline. I got married, true, without much sense, but my wife straightened me out. Well, and you, Mom, have had enough of living here alone. Maybe indeed, let's go together to the city. You see, I've grown up, become a normal person. You'll live with us, and we'll have children. Your grandchildren, one, by the way, already exists, Jerome. He's a good guy, smart. Oh, I don't know, Ryan. And you, Bertha, forgive me. I can't decide right away. Maybe later I'll come to visit you, but not now. Go on your own, settle your affairs. That's what they did. They went to the city to start a new happy life there. Ryan and Bertha immediately started living together as a family and took Jerome, of course. Their life was getting better, which was not surprising. Both were tired of the trials of the past, which they wanted to forget as soon as possible, and just be happy people. But the past, as it happened, reminded itself. Ryan and Bertha had to participate in the trials of his ex-wife and her accomplice as witnesses and victims. Ryan didn't wish Virginia too much trouble, but apparently she wouldn't be able to escape punishment. However, no one would say that the punishment isn't deserved. They had to meet with the past, and Bertha, once being already a successful married woman, noticed her former husband, Michael, on the street. From his appearance, it was noticeable that life wasn't going well for him. However, she was little concerned about it. Bertha didn't intend to talk to him. She just wanted to walk past. But Michael, seeing her, grabbed her hand. "Bertha, I'm so glad to see you." "Well, I'm glad you're happy. What do you want?" she asked discontentedly. "I thought all our questions were long settled." "Yes, they're settled, you're absolutely right, but new ones can arise, right?" he persisted. "What new ones?" "I'm sure I have nothing else to do with you," Bertha said, trying to pull her hand away and leave. But Michael wasn't going to back off. "Just wait, Bertha. The past is forgotten, buried, and now we can come together and live together because we loved each other. We had such a good time. I still love you." "Have you lost your mind, Michael? Maybe we did have a good time together, but only until you brought your pregnant mistress into the house. After that, there's nothing left for us to talk about." "Do you think so? How can there be nothing? How can there be nothing? We were husband and wife. We have a common child. By the way, how is he?" "Everything's fine. I got married, Michael." "There's nothing more between us," Bertha replied. "How can this be?" the former husband wilted. "Are you sure there is nothing?" How can there be nothing if Michael couldn't come up with arguments that could bring back his ex-wife, and she didn't understand what he wanted from her? "You have Amanda and children with her. Why don't you live with her? What do you need from me now?" "I want to live with you, and I don't live with Amanda. She left me because I lost everything, business, apartment, everything. And she turned out to be not at all what I thought, just a vile woman. You know, she realized I was broke, so she left, gave birth to twins, didn't even tell me. I don't even know where she is now." "Or you don't want to know? Apparently you want me to be with you again and help you solve various issues." "No, Michael, it will never happen. Leave me alone." She still managed to break away from him, got into her car, and drove away without looking back at the person who had caused her such a serious trauma. But the question about Amanda still touched her. She left Michael, gave birth to twins, and what next? Where does she live now? Bertha didn't think that this quiet, modest girl suddenly turned into a predator, leaving her husband because he lost his business. Most likely Michael either did something nasty, or she was so disappointed in him that she preferred to live alone. But where? With whom? Judging by what Bertha remembered, Amanda had a very bad relationship with her parents. They probably wouldn't have accepted her. And Bertha couldn't just leave her and forget about her. She wanted to know about her current life, so she started asking around, trying to find Amanda. It wasn't easy, primarily because she was no longer in this world. Amanda had died indeed, giving birth to 2 children boys who became orphans and now lived in an orphanage. Understanding that she couldn't accept this, Bertha rushed to her husband. "Ryan, listen. I understand this is a very difficult question, but I can't help but ask," and she told him about Amanda's death and the 2 little ones living in the orphanage. "I want to take them, adopt them. It's not right for children to grow up in an orphanage, and these are Jerome's blood brothers." "Yes, you're right. It's not right. I know firsthand what kind of life is there, and I agree. I'll support you. I've always wanted to be a father of many children, you know. It's probably every orphan's dream, but I never thought it could happen so soon." So their family became 3 boys, and it turned out that this was not the limit because Bertha was pregnant. When she told Ryan about it, he was genuinely delighted. "Well, we've already become a large family, and now we'll become a super large one and it would be great if it's twins again. But let's hope they're girls this time. We almost have a football team with the boys." "Well, I doubt it will be twins this time, but there will be a girl," Bertha replied with a laugh. "And you know what? I talked to your mom about moving in with us. She agreed."